They begged for mercy, and the galaxy realized humanity never forgives. The Grand Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Marcus Blackwood stood alone on the central platform. Thousands of alien representatives watched from tiered rings that rose like a massive amphitheater around him. The chamber's vast dome displayed the cosmos, stars, nebulae, and countless worlds, a reminder of what was at stake. Admiral Blackwood, a tall man with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war, remained motionless in his crisp blue uniform adorned with campaign ribbons. Unlike the elaborate robes and breathing apparatuses worn by many council members, his attire was simple, functional human. Representatives of the Galactic Council, announced Elder Vrixel, his translucent skin pulsing with luminescent patterns of barely contained disgust. We convene this emergency session to address the actions of species designation 7294C, locally known as humanity. The Elder's 4 upper limbs gestured to activate holographic displays around the chamber. Immediately, images of devastation appeared. Once proud cities reduced to ash, orbital stations drifting as debris, planetary surfaces scarred beyond recognition. The Krellin homeworld, Elder Vrixal continued, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. A founding member of this council for 12 millennia, 3 billion Krellins gone. His appendages trembled with emotion. An entire civilization effectively erased by the actions of the newest spacefaring species in our community. Blackwood's weathered face betrayed nothing. A Toran representative rose from her section, her bovine features set in a grimace. The Krellin assault on the human colony claimed 12,000 lives, she stated, her voice deep and resonant. The human response killed billions. This goes beyond disproportionate force. This was extinction. They attacked Earth first, Blackwood stated simply, his voice carrying through the chamber without technological assistance. We warned them. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. The Admiral's calm demeanor seemed to unsettle the representatives more than any display of emotion might have. You warned them, repeated the Council's chief arbiter, a being of pure energy contained within an ancient exosuit. The arbiter floated forward, closer to the human. This council has convened not merely to judge, but to understand. The galaxy fears what we've witnessed. A holographic display activated behind Blackwood, showing Earth, a small blue planet that somehow produced the species that brought the mighty Krellin Empire to its knees in less than a standard week. You must understand, Blackwood said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet that somehow carried to every corner of the vast chamber. Humanity spent its entire history fighting itself. We perfected warfare against our own kind. When we finally united and looked to the stars, we hoped for peace. The Admiral's eyes hardened as he scanned the chamber. But the Krellins taught us something important about the galaxy. They taught us that the same old story repeats even among the stars. He stepped forward, causing several representatives to flinch backward. Humanity forgives mistakes. We forgive accidents. We even forgive the occasional intentional slight. His voice dropped further. But we do not forgive deliberate attacks on our people. We do not forgive the slaughter of our children. And we never ever forget. The silence in the chamber was absolute. The Krellins begged for mercy after their surrender. Blackwood finished. They should have begged for it before they attacked. From the highest tier, a spindly representative with compound eyes and vibrating antennae spoke. Human, your species has been spacefaring for barely 30 rotations. You cannot simply arrive in the galactic community and what? Blackwood interrupted, causing gasps among the more traditional members. Accept the slaughter of our people as some sort of galactic initiation? Bow to bullies because they've been bullying longer than we've had starships. Elder Vrixel's skin pulsed rapid patterns of anger. The Council has maintained peace for 50,000 years. No, Blackwood said flatly. The Council has maintained a status quo that benefits its founding members. You've watched dozens of emerging civilizations be put in their place by the Krellins. You did nothing. The holographic displays shifted to show recordings retrieved from Krellin archives, previous species being attacked, subjugated, some even driven to extinction. Records the Council had buried. We accessed these during our counteroffensive, Blackwood explained. The Krellins kept trophies. They were quite proud of their work. The Chief Arbiter's exosuit hummed as it processed the images. These records were sealed by Council order. Yes, Blackwood nodded. We found those orders too, signed by many representatives in this chamber today. The murmurs turned to shouts of outrage and denial. Elder Vrixel raised all forearms, demanding order. You come to our council, accuse us of complicity, and expect what? Forgiveness for genocide? The elder demanded. No, Blackwood replied. I don't expect forgiveness. I came to deliver a message, not ask permission. Humanity will defend itself with whatever force necessary against any threat. We wanted to join a peaceful community of worlds. Instead, we found predators wearing the masks of diplomats. The Admiral gestured toward the holographic displays still showing the Krellin victims of the past. Those species deserved protection. The Krellins deserved punishment. Since this council failed at both we acted, we would do it again. Is that a threat, human? Asked a gaseous being, its voice bubbling through translation devices. It's a promise, Blackwood replied. Attack humanity and face extinction. Respect our boundaries and find no better friend in the galaxy. The chief arbiter floated closer. And if this council finds your actions unacceptable, if we impose sanctions, blockades, or worse, Blackwood looked directly at the energy being. Then you will discover that the Krellin lesson was just the beginning of humanity's education. Elder Vrixel conferred quietly with other senior members before addressing the chamber again. We will recess to consider these revelations. Admiral Blackwood will remain on station. As representatives began filing out, a small, gray-skinned alien approached Blackwood. Admiral, the being said quietly, I am Trill, representative of the Malorians. We were nearly eradicated by the Krellins a century ago. The Council reduced the incident to a border dispute in official records. Blackwood nodded respectfully. My people. Trill hesitated, glancing around nervously. My people wish to express our gratitude. The Krellins would have eventually returned to finish what they started with us. Your people have nothing to fear from Earth, Blackwood assured him. It is not fear we feel toward humanity. Trill replied with what might have been a smile. It is hope. As Trill departed, Blackwood noticed other representatives approaching, smaller species, newer council members, those who had lived in the shadow of Krellin power. Their expressions and postures suggested not condemnation, but cautious approval. The Admiral permitted himself a small smile. Perhaps humanity's brutal entrance onto the galactic stage would ultimately create something better than the corrupt peace it had shattered. His communicator buzzed discreetly. A message from Earth Command, Phase 2 authorized. Proceed at discretion. Blackwood straightened his uniform. The real negotiations were about to begin. The galaxy would learn that humanity's capacity for destruction was matched only by its vision for a better future, one where the strong protected the weak, rather than preyed upon them. And any who opposed that vision would discover why the Krellins had begged for mercy, far too late. They begged for mercy, and the galaxy realized humanity never forgives. The Earth Embassy on Galactic Central shimmered in the light of 3 setting suns. Ambassador Eleanor Wright stood at the viewports watching alien diplomats and officials hurry across the massive plaza below. The curved glass-like structure behind her was a marvel of human engineering, built in record time to announce humanity's arrival on the galactic stage. Madam Ambassador, her aide, Thomas Rivera, approached with a data tablet. The Krellin representative is demanding another meeting. Eleanor turned, her dark skin contrasting with the silver diplomatic uniform she wore. At 62, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had negotiated peace treaties on Earth before humanity reached the stars. Let me guess, she said, taking the tablet. More complaints about our ships entering their trade routes? Thomas nodded, his expression grim. They've escalated their language. This time they're calling it a deliberate provocation and territorial aggression. Eleanor sighed. The trade routes in question are 18 light-years from their nearest colony and were mapped by the Alderaan merchants 1,000 years before the Krellins achieved spaceflight. She scrolled through the diplomatic message, her frown deepening. They're threatening consequences now. That's new. The embassy's secure doors slid open as Admiral James Foster entered. Unlike Ambassador Wright's ceremonial attire, his uniform was utilitarian, the dark blue of Earth's defense force with minimal insignia. I take it you've seen the Krellin message, he said, his weathered face serious. Foster had spent 30 years in Earth's navies before being assigned to the diplomatic mission. Eleanor gestured to the seating area overlooking the plaza. James, what's your military assessment? The Krellins have been increasingly hostile since we established this embassy last year, but this feels different. The admiral sat heavily. Intelligence suggests they're mobilizing their third fleet, ostensibly for exercises, but the positioning is concerning. They're placing ships near our colony on Novaterra. Thomas looked between them. Novaterra is our most distant colony, only 12,000 people, mostly research teams and their families, and the furthest from immediate help. Foster added grimly, 4 days at maximum FTL for our nearest response vessels. Eleanor placed the tablet down carefully. The Galactic Council assured us that founding members like the Krellans would respect new species sovereignty. With respect, Madam Ambassador, Foster said. Several smaller representatives warned us privately about the Krellans. The Malorians, the Jaziri, they all said the Council often looks the other way when the Krellans discipline newcomers. Discipline? Thomas asked. Their word, Foster explained. Apparently, it's an unofficial tradition. The Krellans test new spacefaring species, provoke them, sometimes raid outer colonies. If the species shows appropriate humility, they're accepted as subordinate powers. If they fight back too effectively, Eleanor's expression darkened. They're made examples of, Foster nodded. 3 species in the last millennium were driven back to their home planets, their colonies destroyed, their space capabilities crippled for generations. The ambassador stood and returned to the viewport. And the Council permitted this? Not officially, Foster said. But effectively, yes. The Krellans are founding members with extensive trade networks and military alliances. Many Council species depend on them economically. Eleanor stared at the alien sky, where unfamiliar constellations were beginning to appear. We came here in peace. Our mission was to join a galactic community. Perhaps we were naive, Thomas suggested quietly. No, Eleanor said firmly. Hopeful but not naive. Earth Central was well aware we might face challenges. That's why our diplomatic corps and defense forces trained together. She turned back to them, her decision made. Admiral, implement Defense Protocol Theta. Quietly. I want our ships ready, but no visible mobilization that could give the Krellans pretext. And the Krellan representative? Thomas asked. Schedule the meeting for tomorrow, Eleanor said. I'll remind them that Earth seeks friendship with all species, but that we also maintain the right to defend our people and interests. Perhaps diplomatic clarity will prevent misunderstandings. Foster stood. And if diplomacy fails? Eleanor's eyes hardened. Then the Krellans will learn that humans don't respond well to bullying. We've had enough practice with our own tyrants through history. The meeting never happened. At 0340 Earth Standard Time, the Krellan fleet dropped out of FTL near Novaterra. Within minutes, the colony's communications array was destroyed, preventing distress calls. The Galactic Council's central chamber was in uproar. Ambassador Wright stood at the speaking platform, her usual diplomatic composure replaced by cold fury as she addressed the assembled representatives. The unprovoked attack on Novaterra constitutes an act of war, she stated, her voice carrying through the vast space. 12,000 civilians, scientists, teachers, children, dead or missing. The Krellan representative, Vorex, a tall reptilian with iridescent scales and elaborate ceremonial armor, rose from his privileged position near the council elders. The human colony was conducting illegal scans of Krellan space, he declared. We issued warnings that were ignored. The response was proportionate to the provocation. Eleanor's laugh was without humor. Proportionate? You obliterated a research colony, and these supposed scans occurred 18 light-years from your territory. Elder Vrixal raised his limbs for order. The council calls for restraint from both parties while we investigate these claims. Investigate? Eleanor's voice was dangerously quiet. While you investigate, I have received authorization from Earth Central to inform the council of our response. The chamber grew still. The Krellan Empire has 24 hours to withdraw all military forces from human space, acknowledge their act of aggression, and prepare to make reparations for the attack on Novaterra. Borex's scales shifted to a pattern indicating amusement or contempt. Or what, human? Your species has barely mastered faster-than-light travel. The Krellan Empire has conquered worlds for 10,000 years. Eleanor didn't respond to him directly. Instead, she addressed the entire council. We came to this community hoping for peaceful cooperation. The Krellans have chosen a different path. So be it, she turned to leave, then paused. One final message authorized directly from Earth Command to the Krellan leadership. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally and withdraw from all human territories. There will be no negotiation. There will be no extension. Laughter or its various alien equivalents rippled through parts of the chamber. The human demand seemed absurd given the known military disparity. As Eleanor departed, the Malorian representative Trill hurried to catch her. "Ambassador Wright," the small gray alien said urgently, "you must understand what you face. The Krellans will not surrender. They will escalate. They've done this many times before." Eleanor slowed her pace. "We appreciate your concern, Representative Trill, but perhaps you misunderstand. This isn't a negotiating tactic." Trill's large eyes blinked rapidly. "But your military, the technological gap, is perhaps not what the Council believes it to be," Eleanor said quietly. "We chose to approach the galactic community with our hands extended in friendship, not revealing everything we're capable of. The Krellans mistook this for weakness." "What are you saying?" Trill asked, antenna quivering. "I'm saying that humanity spent centuries preparing for first contact. Representative Trill, we hoped for the best but planned for the worst." Before Trill could respond, Admiral Foster approached rapidly. "Madam Ambassador, we've received word from Earth Command. The Krellan fleet is mobilizing near their homeworld. Intelligence suggests they're preparing a strike against Earth itself." Eleanor nodded, unsurprised. "They believe a decapitation strike will break human resolve. They're about to discover how wrong they are." As they boarded their diplomatic shuttle, Foster received another message. His expression changed from grim determination to something like pity. "What is it, James?" Eleanor asked. "Command has authorized deployment of the Phantom Fleet," he said quietly. "Operation Nemesis is now active." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. "God help the Krellans, then. They'll need it more than we will." The Krellan homeworld rotated serenely, its 3 moons reflecting light onto gleaming cities and ancient monuments. In high orbit, the Krellan Imperial Fleet gathered, thousands of warships preparing to teach the upstart humans their place in the galactic order. On the flagship's bridge, Supreme Commander Dravik received the human ultimatum with theatrical amusement for his officers' benefit. "They demand our surrender," he announced, prompting roars of laughter. "These primitives actually believe they can challenge the Imperial Fleet." His second-in-command approached with a data crystal. "The attack plan for Earth is prepared, Supreme Commander. Our analysis suggests their defenses will fail within hours." Dravik's scales shimmered with anticipated triumph. "Excellent. The Council may protest, but once the humans are subjugated, they'll accept it as they always do." He paused, studying a tactical display. "Any unusual activity from human forces?" "None, Commander. Their ships remain in defensive positions near their colonies. They appear to be paralyzed with indecision or fear." Dravik nodded, satisfied. "Aye." They begged for mercy, and the galaxy realized humanity never forgives. Supreme Commander Dravik's scales paled as he stared at the human admiral on his viewscreen. Behind him, his bridge crew scrambled to make sense of the sensor readings that showed hundreds of Earth vessels now, positioned throughout the Krellan formation. Vessels that had somehow appeared without triggering a single proximity alarm. "This is impossible," Dravik hissed. "Our detection systems are the most advanced in the galaxy." Admiral Zara Nazari's expression remained impassive. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, and the uniform she wore was not the ceremonial attire seen on human diplomats but something more functional, the outfit of a warrior. "Your detection systems," she replied calmly, "like much of your military technology, are based on principles shared among council races for millennia. Principles humanity chose not to adopt." On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Nazari sat in the command chair surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every ship in both fleets. Unlike the ornate, cavernous command centers favored by Krellan vessels, the human bridge was compact, practical, with crew members connected directly to their stations through neural interfaces. "Target weapon systems only," Nazari ordered. "Minimum casualties. Maximum psychological impact." Her executive officer, Commander Victor Reyes, confirmed the order through his neural link, transmitting targeting parameters to the fleet instantaneously. "Sir," he reported, "Phantom Fleet is in position. All ships report ready." Nazari nodded. "The Krellans are transmitting to their central command and attempting to realign their defensive grids." "Let them." Back on the Krellin flagship, Dravik was regaining his composure, his scales shifting to the aggressive crimson pattern that had intimidated countless species before. "You have made a fatal mistake, human," he snarled. "Your ships may have some primitive cloaking technology, but you are outnumbered 3-1. Our weapons systems are charging. Your surprise means nothing now." Nazari's expression didn't change. "Commander Dravik, I want you to understand something. Humanity has observed the galaxy for over a century before making formal contact. We studied council records, intercepted transmissions, analyzed technology. We knew exactly what we would face." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Dravik's reptilian features. "The colony you attacked?" Nazari continued. "Nova Terra was populated primarily by scientists and their families, yes. But they weren't just researchers. They were military intelligence, weapons developers, strategic planners, all volunteers who understood they were the most vulnerable human outpost. On tactical displays throughout both fleets, the distinctive energy signatures of Krellin weapon systems reaching full power appeared as red indicators. "All Krellin vessels' weapons are hot," Commander Reyes reported. "They're preparing to fire." Nazari leaned forward slightly. "Commander Dravik, please reconsider. Your weapons will not function as expected." Dravik bared his teeth in what passed for a smile among his species. "Brave words, Admiral." "Fire at will," he commanded his fleet. Throughout the vast Krellin armada, gunners activated firing protocols. Energy weapons designed to tear through the strongest known shielding discharged and did nothing. On ship after ship, weapon systems reported successful deployment, but no energy beams emerged. No projectiles launched. Targeting systems showed green indicators while gunners stared in confusion at view screens that showed completely intact human vessels. "What's happening?" Dravik demanded, his voice rising. "Engineering. Explain this failure." His chief engineer, visible on an internal communication screen, looked bewildered. "Systems show weapons fired successfully, Commander. Energy signatures confirm discharge, but it's as if the energy simply disappeared." On the Retribution, Nazari nodded to her executive officer. "Now, Commander." Throughout the human fleet, small, sleek drones deployed from each vessel. They moved with impossible speed, weaving through the Krellin formation. Within seconds, precise energy pulses struck each Krellin ship's external weapons emplacements, not destroying them, disabling them with surgical precision. "Phase 1 complete," Reyes reported. "All Krellin offensive capabilities neutralized. 0 casualties." Nazari reopened the channel to Dravik's flagship. "Commander, your weapons have been temporarily disabled. No lives have been lost. I offer you one final opportunity to stand down your forces and withdraw from this system." Dravik's scales had shifted to a mottled pattern indicating extreme stress, but his voice remained defiant. "This trick changes nothing. The Krellin Empire does not surrender to lesser species. Our secondary systems are activating now." He cut the transmission and turned to his officers. "Launch all fighter squadrons. Their energy absorption technology cannot possibly handle thousands of smaller craft." Throughout the Krellin fleet, launch bays opened. Fighter craft, thousands of them, poured into space, their pilots eager to restore honor to the suddenly vulnerable armada. On the Retribution, Tactical Officer Lieutenant Amara Singh reported calmly. "Krellin fighters launching. Approximately 4,000 craft," Nazari nodded. "As expected." "Commander Reyes, implement Phase 2. Throughout the human fleet, a new type of drone deployed, smaller than the first wave, barely visible even on advanced sensors. They spread like a glittering cloud through space. The Krellin fighters accelerated toward human vessels, weapons charged. The first wave fired, and watched in disbelief as their energy weapons dissipated harmlessly against invisible barriers, meters from the human ships. "Micro-shield network established," Singh reported. "Krellin fighter weapons ineffective. Deploy countermeasures," Nazari ordered. Non-lethal protocols remain in effect. The cloud of micro-drones activated, each one targeting a Krellin fighter. Instead of weapons fire, they emitted precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulses that flooded Krellin control systems with contradictory commands. Throughout the formation, fighter craft suddenly spun out of control, their pilots unable to maintain course as navigation systems failed. Not a single craft was destroyed, not a single pilot killed, but within minutes the entire Krellin fighter force drifted helplessly in space, completely neutralized. In the Council observation vessel positioned at a safe distance, representatives from a dozen major species watched in stunned silence. The Krellin Empire, military powerhouse of the galaxy for millennia, was being systematically disarmed without a single casualty. "Impossible," whispered the Tauran observer, her bovine features slack with shock. "The technological gap. It's unprecedented." The Malorian representative Trill watched with a complex mix of emotions. "They could destroy the entire fleet," he noted quietly. "Yet they choose precision over power." "For now," added the Jaziri observer, her crystalline form refracting light nervously. "But what happens when their patience ends?" On the Krellin flagship, chaos reigned. Dravik stared at tactical displays showing his once mighty fleet completely neutralized. Engineers reported all attempts to restore weapons or communications failing. Fighter control confirmed all squadrons disabled. "How?" he demanded of no one in particular. "How is this possible?" His second-in-command approached cautiously. "Sir, we're receiving a tight beam transmission from the human flagship. For your eyes only." Dravik activated the private channel. Admiral Nazari appeared again, still calm, still composed. "Commander Dravik," she said, "I understand your confusion. Let me explain what's happening," she gestured, and a holographic display appeared beside her, showing technical schematics of Krellin weapon systems. "Your weapons rely on pseudo-quantum excitation to generate destructive energy," she explained. "Our ships generate a counterfield that harmlessly absorbs and redirects that energy. Technology we developed over 50 years, ago, but kept hidden." The display shifted to show the fighter craft now drifting powerless. "Your control systems use crystalline computation, matrices based on Alderaan principles. From the Third Galactic Age," Nazari continued. "Elegant but vulnerable to targeted electromagnetic manipulation." Dravik's breathing had become labored, his natural armor plates shifting uncomfortably as the implications became clear. "You've been studying us for decades," he realized, "before we even knew of your existence." "Correct," Nazari confirmed. "Earth's first faster-than-light probe detected Krellin communications over a century ago. We deciphered your language, studied your technology, observed your tactics. By the time we made official contact with the Council, we had countermeasures for every weapon in your arsenal." "Why?" Dravik demanded. "Why this deception?" "We hoped it wouldn't be necessary," Nazari replied, her tone hardening slightly. "We genuinely sought peaceful relations. But we've studied history, both yours and ours. We knew the strong sometimes prey on those they perceive as weak. So we appeared diplomatic, technologically modest, eager to learn." She leaned forward, while concealing capabilities that would have earned us immediate respect or fear. "We chose the path of peace first. You chose differently." Dravik's scales had faded to a dull gray, the Krellin equivalent of defeat. "What do you want from us?" "Initially, nothing but to be left alone," Nazari answered. "After your attack on Nova Terra?" "Justice." The Admiral's expression remained professional, but her voice carried the weight of 12,000 lost lives. "I am authorized to accept your complete surrender, Commander. Your vessels will power." They begged for mercy, and the galaxy realized humanity never forgives. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber hummed with tension. Unlike the grand amphitheater used for regular proceedings, this smaller circular room was designed for crisis management. Representatives from the 12 most powerful council species sat around a polished black table, with Elder Vrixel presiding. "The situation is unprecedented," the Elder stated, his translucent skin pulsing with patterns indicating extreme stress. "The Krellin fleet, the entire fleet, neutralized without a single casualty." The Tauran representative, Madrax, leaned forward. "The humans displayed technology far beyond what they disclosed upon joining the council. This deliberate deception violates Protocol 7 of the Membership Charter." "Does it?" asked Trill of the Malorians, his small gray form nearly lost in the oversized chair. "Protocol 7 requires disclosure of capabilities that could destabilize galactic peace. One could argue the humans have demonstrated exactly the opposite, the ability to neutralize a threat without bloodshed." The Krellin representative, a hastily appointed diplomat named Cyrex who replaced the disgraced Vorex, slammed a clawed hand on the table. "This is absurd. The humans humiliated the Imperial fleet. They've taken thousands of our finest warriors prisoner, and now their vessels orbit our homeworld like the Krellins orbited Nova Terra before destroying it," interrupted Ambassador Eleanor Wright, who sat calmly at the human position. Or like they orbited the Jaziri colonies 30 years ago, or the Malorian outposts a century before that. Cyrex's scales flushed with anger. Those were legitimate military operations against species that violated our territorial. Enough. Elder Vrixel's voice cut through the rising argument. We have received a formal communication from the human leadership on Earth. Ambassador Wright will present it now. Eleanor stood, her silver diplomatic uniform contrasting with the somber mood. The United Earth Government has authorized me to inform the key council of our intentions regarding the Krellin Empire. She activated a holographic display, showing the Krellin homeworld with human vessels in orbit. As you know, our forces have secured all Krellin military assets both in space and on major planetary installations. No further resistance has been encountered. And the prisoners? Asked the Jaziri representative, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns of concern. All Krellin military personnel are being treated according to Earth's Geneva Conventions, Eleanor assured them. They receive appropriate nutrition, medical care, and housing suitable for their physiological needs. No interrogation techniques beyond standard questioning are employed, Cyrex scoffed. How merciful. And what of our sovereignty? Our civilian population? Our future? Eleanor's expression hardened slightly. That depends on what we've discovered in Krellin military archives, she gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show document fragments, tactical analyses, and recorded conversations among Krellin High Command. Operation Human Subjugation was not a response to any provocation, Eleanor explained. It was planned months before any contact between our species. The attack on Nova Terra was intended as phase 1 of a larger campaign to, and I quote internal Krellin, documents, establish proper hierarchy by force before the primitives develop delusions of equality. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as more evidence appeared, historical records showing similar plans implemented against other emerging species over centuries. Furthermore, Eleanor continued, we've discovered that following the planned subjugation of Earth, the Krellin High Command had already selected their next target. The display showed tactical assessments of another world, a temperate planet with sprawling, ocean-based cities. The Narvasi whispered, the Alderaan representative. They achieved faster-than-light capability just last year. Eleanor nodded. The pattern is clear and documented across millennia. The Krellins have appointed themselves the gatekeepers of galactic power, deciding which species may advance and which must be put in their place. She turned directly to Cyrex. And this council has enabled them, either through active complicity or passive acceptance. Elder Vrixel's skin patterns indicated embarrassment or shame. What does Earth demand? Justice, Eleanor replied simply. The Krellin leadership will face trial for crimes against sentient beings, including the massacre at Nova Terra. Their military will be permanently disbanded. Their weapons technology will be placed under multi-species oversight. Cyrex rose from his seat, scales now nearly black with rage. This is occupation. Colonization. You claim to seek justice while planning the enslavement of our entire species. Eleanor remained calm. No Krellin civilians will be harmed. Your economic and cultural institutions will remain intact. Your representatives will continue to serve on this council. But your days of military dominance, of forcing other species to bow before you, are over. And if we refuse? Cyrex demanded. The room fell silent. That would be unwise, Eleanor said quietly. In the grand chamber of the Krellin Imperial Palace, Emperor Vex Calthor, 23rd ruler of the Eternal Dynasty, sat on his ancestral throne. Around him, his ministers and advisors watched nervously as he reviewed the human terms on a data tablet. The Emperor's scales, once vibrant with the royal purple hue that indicated his genetic superiority, had faded to a dull gray. His ceremonial armor, designed to exaggerate his already impressive size, now seemed to weigh him down. How did we not know? He asked, his normally commanding voice reduced to something like bewilderment. How did we not detect their true capabilities? Grand Minister Zalth, oldest and wisest of his advisors, stepped forward. Majesty, the humans concealed their technological advancement deliberately. Our intelligence services believed their public displays reflected their actual capabilities, a deception worthy of the Empire in its glory days, the Emperor noted with bitter admiration. continued scrolling through the terms. Military disbanded, war criminals surrendered for trial, reparations to Nova Terra survivors, technological oversight for a century. The list went on. And the alternative? He asked, though he suspected the answer. Minister Zolth's scales shifted to the solemn pattern used when delivering grave news. Their vessels maintain position above every major Krellin city, Majesty. Their weapons, which we now know far exceed our defensive capabilities, remain armed. They have already demonstrated they can neutralize our military without casualties. If they choose to employ lethal force, the Emperor nodded slowly. Total planetary destruction becomes possible. Beyond possible. Majesty, likely. The throne room's massive doors opened as a human delegation entered, escorted by Imperial guards who looked diminished without their energy weapons. Ambassador Eleanor Wright led the group, accompanied by Admiral Foster and several diplomatic aides. The Emperor rose, towering over the humans, as was his biological right as a Krellin. Even in defeat, certain protocols must be observed. Ambassador, he acknowledged with minimal courtesy, you stand in the sacred hall of the Eternal Dynasty, where 1,000 species have knelt in respect over 10 millennia. Eleanor met his gaze without intimidation. Emperor Vexcalthor, Earth appreciates the historical significance of this audience. Do you? The Emperor asked, a hint of his former majesty returning. Do you truly understand what you have done? The Krellin Empire has maintained order in this sector for longer than your species has had written language. Order? Eleanor questioned. Or fear? The Emperor descended from his dais, moving closer to the human delegation. His massive form would have been terrifying had the power dynamic not shifted so dramatically. Both have their uses in maintaining peace, he replied. The strong must guide the weak. This is the natural order of things. Admiral Foster spoke for the first time. We've studied your history extensively, Emperor. The early Krellin Empire was indeed a force for stability and progress. Your ancestors built trade networks, established common laws, helped younger species develop sustainably. The Emperor's scales lightened slightly at this unexpected acknowledgement. But something changed, Foster continued. About 3,000 years ago, the Empire shifted from mentorship to domination, from guidance to control. Necessity, the Emperor stated firmly. As more species achieved space travel, competition for resources increased. Conflicts erupted. The Empire prevented wars by establishing clear hierarchies. By forcing emerging species to submit or face extinction, Eleanor countered. By deciding who was worthy of advancement and who must remain subordinate. Yes, the Emperor hissed, his patience finally breaking. Because we alone had the wisdom and experience to make such judgments. Look at your own species, barely united on your homeworld, constantly at war with yourselves, and now suddenly among the stars with technology you clearly don't have the maturity to wield responsibly. Eleanor remained calm in the face of his outburst. Perhaps you're right about our past. Humanity's history is indeed bloody and filled with the same patterns of domination you've established on a galactic scale. That's precisely why we recognized your tactics immediately. We've seen them before in our own tyrants. She stepped closer, ignoring the nervous shifting of the Imperial guards. But you made a critical error in your assay. They begged for mercy, and the galaxy realized humanity never forgives. 5 years after the Krellin surrender, the Galactic Council chamber was transformed. Where once the ancient founding species had dominated proceedings from privileged positions, now representatives sat in a circular arrangement that symbolized the new equality among member worlds. At the center of the chamber stood Admiral Marcus Blackwood, concluding his testimony about the final phase of what historians now called the Krellin Reckoning. The evidence is conclusive, Blackwood stated, his voice carrying easily through the vast space. The files recovered from the Imperial archives prove beyond doubt that the Krellin attack on Nova Terra was not an isolated incident or a response to perceived provocation. He gestured, and holographic displays activated throughout the chamber. They showed tactical assessments, communication logs, and strategic plans spanning centuries, all focused on the systematic suppression of emerging spacefaring species. For over 3,000 years, Blackwood continued, the Krellin Empire implemented what they called the Ascension Control Protocol. Any species that developed faster than light capability was assessed. Those deemed properly deferential to established powers were permitted limited expansion. Those showing too much independence or potential were subjected to disciplinary action, ranging from colonial destruction to complete subjugation. The newest council member, a representative of the recently spacefaring Narvasi, leaned forward. His aquatic features reflected the blue light of the holograms as he studied the documents. "These plans," he said, his translator conveying his shock, "they include detailed strategies for attacking our homeworld. They were going to target us next." Blackwood nodded. The Narvasi were indeed next on their list. Your people's rapid development of efficient fusion technology and your cultural emphasis on exploration marked you as potentially disruptive to the established order. The Narvasi representative Zingdu, gill flaps fluttered in the equivalent of a shudder. Then humanity's actions, however severe, saved us from the Krellin's attention. "We didn't just act for ourselves," Blackwood confirmed. "We acted for the next civilization they planned to teach their place." Elder Vrixall, still leading the council but now as first among equals rather than privileged ruler, raised his limbs for attention. "Admiral Blackwood, humanity's evidence regarding Krellin intentions is not in dispute. What remains at issue is the proportionality of Earth's response. The complete dismantling of a founding member's military capability has created significant instability." Blackwood turned to face the Elder directly. "With respect, Elder, what you call instability, others might call opportunity. For 3 millennia, the Council maintained a superficial peace by allowing the Krellins to terrorize smaller powers and emerging species. That wasn't stability, it was suppression." Murmurs spread through the chamber. In the 5 years since the Krellin surrender, diplomatic norms had changed dramatically. Once silent representatives of minor species now spoke openly, challenging the narratives of the traditional powers. Ambassador Eleanor Wright, now serving as Earth's permanent representative to the Council, rose from her seat. Her silver hair matched her diplomatic uniform, but her posture remained as straight and dignified as ever. "The Council will vote today on the proposed sanctions against Earth," she stated calmly. "Before you cast your votes, I ask you to consider not just the evidence of Krellin aggression, but the reality of what has followed humanity's intervention." She activated a different set of holographic displays, showing statistical analyses of interstellar trade, diplomatic relations, and technological exchange over the past 5 years. Trade between emerging and established species has increased by 42%, she noted. Technological exchange protocols have been reformed, allowing newly spacefaring civilizations access to safety and medical advances previously restricted. 23 former Krellin client worlds have established independent diplomatic missions. The Tauran representative Madrax snorted in derision. At what cost? The Krellin homeworld remains under human occupation. Their colonies operate under restrictive oversight. Their once proud species has been humiliated before the galaxy. Blackwood turned toward the Tauran. Krellin civilian casualties during our entire campaign 0. Krellin economic systems intact. Krellin representation on this council maintained. Compare that to their attack on Nova Terra, where 12,000 civilians were deliberately targeted with no warning and no chance to surrender. He paused, letting the comparison sink in. What the Tauran representative calls humiliation, we call accountability. The Malorian representative Trill, who had risen to become a leading voice for smaller powers, spoke next. "My species was among the first to suffer Krellin discipline a century ago. We lost colonies, technologies, and our rightful place in galactic affairs. Now, under the Protectorate Alliance established by Earth, we and others like us have regained our voice." Trill's large eyes surveyed the chamber. "I remind the Council that the I propose sanctions against Earth for their disproportionate response to Krellin. Aggression come primarily from the same powers that turned a blind eye to Krellin actions for millennia." Elder Vrixall's skin patterns indicated discomfort, but he maintained procedural formality. "The matter will now be put to vote. The proposal before the Council is to impose diplomatic, economic, and technological sanctions on Earth for actions taken against the Krellin Empire, deemed disproportionate to the provocation received." The Chamber's voting system activated. Throughout the tiered seating, representatives registered their positions. The massive display at the Chamber's center tallied the results in real time. As the final votes were recorded, Elder Vrixall's patterns shifted to surprise. "The motion is defeated." By a margin of 78% against, the Council declines to sanction Earth for its actions regarding the Krellin Empire. Ambassador Wright exchanged a glance with Admiral Blackwood. Both had expected a closer vote. The galaxy was changing faster than even they had anticipated. With the Council's indulgence, Wright said, Earth would like to propose an alternative resolution. Elder Vrixall gestured permission. We propose the establishment of the Galactic Advancement Initiative, Wright continued, a program to identify promising pre-FTL species and provide graduated technological assistance rather than isolation or subjugation. Each member world would contribute expertise in fields ranging from sustainable energy to medicine to space travel safety protocols. She looked around the chamber. Rather than fearing new voices in our community, we should welcome them, guide them, learn from them. The proposal sparked immediate discussion. Representatives formed small groups, conferring in dozens of languages as translation systems struggled to keep pace with the excited exchanges. In the midst of this productive chaos, the Krellin representative approached Blackwood and Wright. Unlike his predecessors with their elaborate armor and aggressive postures, Ambassador Lix wore simple diplomatic attire. His scales displayed the muted patterns that had become common among Krellin since their defeat, indicators of humility that would have been unthinkable 6 years earlier. Admiral, Ambassador. He acknowledged them with a respectful gesture. My government has reviewed the proposed advancement initiative. And, Wright prompted when he hesitated. The reformed Krellin Confederation wishes to contribute our biological sciences division to the effort, Lix said carefully. Our expertise in xenobiology and adaptive medicine could be valuable for emerging species facing environmental challenges during early space exploration. Blackwood studied the Krellin carefully. A generous offer, Ambassador Lix. May I ask what motivates it? Lix's scales shifted in a pattern indicating discomfort, but also sincerity. 5 years of reflection have changed many perspectives among my people. Not all, certainly. There are those who dream of restoration, of vengeance. He looked directly at Blackwood, but others have begun to see that our greatest achievements came not when we conquered, but when we built. Not when we dominated, but when we cooperated. Wright nodded. The Confederation's contribution would be welcome, Ambassador. Every species has valuable knowledge to share. As Lix departed, Blackwood turned to Wright. Do you believe him? I believe he believes what he's saying, she replied carefully. Whether the transformation of Krellin society is genuine or merely pragmatic adaptation to their new reality remains to be seen. And if it's the latter? Blackwood asked. Wright's expression hardened slightly. Then the lesson will need reinforcement. The formal council session concluded, but the real work continued in the diplomatic offices and meeting rooms throughout the massive council complex. In one such room, Admiral Blackwood and Ambassador Wright met with representatives of the Protectorate Alliance, the coalition Earth had established to defend emerging, spacefaring civilizations. The alliance had grown from an initial membership of 7 species to 23, including some former Krellin clients who had seized the opportunity to assert their independence. The Galactic Advancement Initiative has strong support, reported Ambassador Kadu of the Jaziri, her